Lawyers are racing to stop a flight deporting 50 people to Jamaica, some of whom have not been there since they were young children. The plane is due to leave at 6:30 tomorrow morning. The government says many of those on board have committed rape, manslaughter and other serious offences. But more than 150 MPs argue some have actually done much less. It comes after a leak of the report into the Windrush scandal said deportations for offenders should be stopped and reconsidered. Our political correspondent Simon Harris explains.
Behind the razor wire of Brook House Detention Centre at Gatwick, a group of prisoners are spending their last night in Britain. Tomorrow they'll be forcibly flown to Jamaica. One of them is a 22-year-old from East London who went to jail for a drugs offence. His mother, who doesn't want to be identified, claims he was groomed by a drug dealer when he was a teenager and should be given a second chance.
When he committed his offence, he was just a child. He made mistake, he was groomed, he made mistake, and then he paid, and then he's so sorry for what he did, and he deserves a chance.
What do you worry most about what will happen to him?
Right now, with the crime and violence in Jamaica, it's given me sleepless night just to think about going there, because I don't think he will survive, because he's coming from England after all these years. He's going to become a target.
Labour says the deportations have echoes of the Windrush scandal. During Theresa May's government, Britons were detained, threatened with deportation and in some cases flown to Caribbean islands against their will. In the Commons today, there was fury on the Labour benches.
We are almost now 2 years on, and people watching see the way that this government holds in such disrespect the contribution of West Indian, Caribbean and black people in this country. When will Black Lives Matter once again?
Many of the proposed deportees came here as children and have no memory of Jamaica. Does the Home Secretary accept that these deportations constitute double jeopardy because the persons have already served an appropriate sentence for their crime?
But the Home Secretary insisted the law was the law.
Every person on this flight has been convicted of a serious offence and received a custodial sentences of 12 months or more, which means that under the Act introduced by the Labour government in 2007, Mr. Speaker, a deportation order must be made.
Tonight, campaigners were considering their next move to try to stop the flight after losing a last-minute legal challenge in the High Court. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Good evening. Its critics say it is over budget, behind schedule and will destroy the countryside. Its fans say it's vital for improving travel and jobs. But whether you like it or not, HS2 is happening. This lunchtime, Boris Johnson confirmed phase 1, which will connect London and Birmingham, admitting it was both a controversial and difficult decision. Well, our political correspondent Simon Harris is at Euston, where the route was due to start. And Simon, a decision, finally.
Yes, Lucrezia, although if you live around here or anywhere along the route of HS2, you could be forgiven for thinking work started years ago. Here in Euston, homes have been knocked down, businesses moved, roads closed. And in West London and the Chilterns, construction sites have appeared, fields have been fenced off. But in truth, the project was on hold while ministers agonised over whether it was value for money. It might be called high speed too, but it's going very slowly. And these protesters are determined to keep it that way. At Denham in Buckinghamshire, they were doing their best to bring the project to a standstill, frustrating attempts to deliver a digger to one of the construction sites.
Basically, we're just walking at snail's pace to, slow down the vehicle and prevent the works from occurring.
Anti-HS2 campaigners and environmentalists have set up several protest camps in the Colne Valley. Tents and tree houses have sprung up on land earmarked for the new railway.
This actual area here, they want a compound to store their equipment. This is a nature reserve. It's madness.
The madness, according to HS2's critics, doesn't stop at environmental damage. They point to an eye-watering splashing of the cash. These so-called enabling works in preparation for the main construction project have already cost £8 billion. Yet, despite all that money being spent, not a single metre of railway track has been laid. That is about to change.
So today, Mr. Speaker, the Cabinet has given high-speed rail the green signal. We are going to get this done.
And that's devastating news for Ron Ryle and his family, whose restored farmhouse at Harefield will be bulldozed to make way for a viaduct.
I think it's a white elephant, but then I've got an axe to grind. But I'm sure I'm right, because in 20 years' time, when it's not finished and it exceeds 250 billion, they can say, he was right.
Phase 1 of HS2 was supposed to run from Euston through Old Oak Common in West London to Birmingham. But to begin with, the London terminus will be Old Oak Common because the new station at Euston won't be ready.
There's already a massive hole in the ground in Euston. It's already a construction site. I think what the community really want now is those homes and those local jobs delivered that they were promised, that might compensate somewhat for the disruption that's caused.
Back in the Colne Valley, a taste of things to come.
I am not resisting! Ow!
On the day HS2 got the final go-ahead, the police took on the protesters and made a number of arrests.
Well, this is a project more than 10 years in the planning. HS2 was first proposed in 2009 under Labour. In February 2017, Parliament gave the project the go-ahead. But in July 2019, the new Prime Minister Boris Johnson ordered a review, effectively putting it all on hold until today. Well, Simon, a very long build-up to today's announcement. What happens next?
Well, construction work proper should begin in April, but that's a huge project in itself, not least because of the tunnels that have to be dug from here to Old Oak Common under West London and under the Chilterns. The Prime Minister said today trains could be running by the end of the decade, but who knows when they'll arrive at Euston. The makeover of this station is in such a mess, the government is going to have to create a whole new organisation to take it on and see it through. And with Old Oak Common as the temporary terminus in London for HS2, that presents another big problem because all of those passengers arriving from Birmingham will have nowhere to go but onto the Crossrail trains, assuming Crossrail is open by then, and that could cause serious overcrowding.
All right, Simon at Euston Station, thank you. Well, next day, London blogger quarantined in Milton Keynes after being flown back from China over fears over the coronavirus has spoken of her sadness at leaving friends behind. Lavender Owl also worries about her mother in Harrow, who's been subjected to racist abuse. They both spoke to our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
So this is my bed, where I spend most of my day.
This is a 21st century isolation ward.
And we do have a TV.
Lavender Ow gave me a guided tour over the phone.
These are some masks that they gave us. I've got a lot of water. The snacks are quite solid, so when we run out, we get more snacks.
For now, this is Lavender's world, all day and every day.
Pretty boring, but I think it's a necessary step to ensure that we're not infectious.
How are you feeling?
I'm fine, yeah. Just hoping that the tests come back negative.
Lavender grew up in Leytonstone in East London, but for the last 4 years has worked in China as a journalist. She spent the Chinese New Year with friends in the city of Xi'an, 250 miles from Wuhan, the epicentre of the coronavirus outbreak. And when the Chinese put Xi'an in lockdown, Lavender was trapped. On Sunday, she managed to get on a British evacuation flight and is now in quarantine with other patients at a secure government facility in Buckinghamshire. How relieved were you to get on that flight at the weekend?
I was relieved, although I kind of left people I care about behind, the friend and her family who I was visiting.
For Lavender's family back here in London, there's another concern. Her mum, Hing, who works as a tourist guide in Chinatown, was spat at by a man in the street.
Suddenly there's a man coming to right in the middle of the group, and start pretending to be sick, And then he was sick towards me, And so I managed to avoid his spat. What is in their mind is their attitude toward Chinese, I think, because I actually didn't do anything to annoy this person. So there must be a reason he chose me.
Anybody who thinks that it is appropriate in response to this challenge to demonise or abuse anybody of the British Chinese community or anybody of Chinese or indeed East Asian origin is completely wrong.
The tea is pretty good. The coffee could be better.
In Milton Keynes, Lavender is getting used to life in quarantine. Are you going stir crazy?
I'd like a glass of wine after I get out.
And that, she hopes, will be very soon. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Good evening. Sometime last Sunday, health officials have confirmed the coronavirus was carried through southeast London in an Uber. The car was taking a woman to the A&E department at University Hospital Lewisham, where she was assessed in isolation. She's now being treated at a specialist unit at St Thomas's. In a sign of growing nervousness in the capital, a GP surgery closed earlier, saying it was due to the virus, but it later confirmed it was a false alarm. With the latest, here's our correspondent, Simon Harris.
London's first confirmed coronavirus patient is tonight being cared for in a specialist unit at St Thomas's. The woman is thought to have picked up the virus in China before flying to London. She's now in the High Consequence Infectious Diseases Centre after first turning up at another London hospital 3 days earlier. On Sunday, she arrived at Lewisham A&E department in an Uber minicab. After tests, she was discharged and taken home in an ambulance. Yesterday, when the tests proved positive, she was admitted to St Thomas's. In a statement, Uber said, "Out of an abundance of caution, we temporarily suspended the account of the driver who transported the individual to hospital." The arrival of the virus in London has raised inevitable questions about how it might spread if the authorities couldn't contain it. In particular, whether there's a risk from the way Londoners get around. Every day, tens of thousands of people travel, often too close for comfort, on crowded trains and buses. Experts fear the tube would act as a network to rapidly spread the virus.
So if the virus arrives in a place that's very well connected, so somewhere like London, for example, or if the virus arrives in a place where there's a high population density, then a general principle is that the virus is more likely to spread. So the risk is higher if the virus arrives somewhere that's very well connected.
But London's mayor insisted there was no cause for alarm and the risk of coronavirus spreading was officially moderate.
There's no risk on using the underground or the bus or other trains or trams. If there was a risk, Public Health England would have to tell us, would have to tell TfL. What I wouldn't do is bury that away. What I do is I let Londoners know.
But London's health service is perhaps understandably jumpy. This GP surgery in Islington suddenly shut its doors today and posted an announcement on its website saying practice is closed due to the coronavirus. It left some patients unnerved.
My daughter went there this morning to book an appointment, but she couldn't get one. My other daughter went 2 days ago. Now I'm worried.
It turned out to be a false alarm, but the NHS is taking no chances. Lewisham Hospital is now installing what it calls a purpose-built pod to test suspected coronavirus cases. Simon Harris, ITV News.